Let's start with the basics. How long have you worked at NFL Films?
I'm finishing up my 38th football season. At this point, I'm the longest tenured producer in the place.
And how'd you get started here?
Way back then, when I was a senior at Penn State, I'd been watching NFL film stuff on television since junior high school. I knew a lot about football. I'd done radio shows at Penn State and then later at Northwestern on professional football. I'd written articles for Pro Football magazines, et cetera, et cetera. And I looked at this stuff from NFL Films and said, somebody's writing this stuff. I can do this. I'd started writing Steve Sable when I was a senior at Penn State, and by the time I was ready to leave Northwestern, he had an opening. The date was June 6, 1975 at 1:35 p.m. Turning point.
And you remember the exact time. That's unbelievable. So tell me, what have been some of your favorite projects that you've had a chance to work on?
Well, the first two Hard Knocks shows. No one knew what this show was supposed to be, and I pretty much invented it as I went along, and within about 3 weeks I was reading things such as a seminal moment in sports television, et cetera, et cetera. I thought, wow, I'm onto something here. Way back in the day, I produced Irv Cross's Legends of the Game features. They were nice. I do the Pop Warner Super Bowl every year. I love that. It's just kids playing football. They're 13 through 15. They're not men yet. They want to be. And they cry when they lose. That's pure. I like that. Pretty much everything I do here I enjoy. I program the Lamar Hunt Theater, Super Bowl Theater at the Hall of Fame. I do that on an annual basis now. On and on.
And you were working on Hard Knocks in Baltimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how have you seen that the franchise has changed since their last Super Bowl appearance?
Well, they have a whole new coaching regime. John Harbaugh replaced Brian Billick. John's different. John grew up under Andy Reid, and for that reason, he's more protective of the inner workings of the organization. Brian just opened the door and said, here, help yourself. That way, of course, that defense that was so young and so capable back then, it's veteran now. And they've got a new quarterback. And whenever, you change quarterbacks, Joe Flacco's a very capable young quarterback who's starting to establish some playoff records. And when he wins that big game, he takes that step that he wants to take to, that elite 3 or 4 quarterbacks at the top of the game. But basically, excuse me, the organization is still built on playing defense and playing, I hate to use this cliche, hard-nosed football, because they're in the AFC North. And if you're going to play with Pittsburgh, if you're going to play Pittsburgh twice a year, you have to play the way the Steelers do, and that's old school, hard-nosed football.
So how many Super Bowls is this for you?
This will be my 36th. I didn't shoot my first 2 years. This will be my 36th game on the sidelines, and now I shoot sound. Back in the day, I shot action, various forms, 32 frames, 48 frames. When I started shooting sound in '91, I became a sound cameraman at the game, and that's a more interesting perspective for me.
Tell me a little bit about what Super Bowl Sunday is like for you. What time do you start? When do you end?
The day starts way too early. We get to the stadium way too early. We spend most of the time sitting around. I literally have fallen asleep underneath tents, tarps, on flat pieces of plywood, sound asleep, snoring, drool running out of my mouth, the whole thing. We're just there too early. We have to do that, of course, to get there, to get through security, to be in place, blah, blah, blah. And the standard line around here is rather be in the building, ready to go, than on the street trying to get in. The game itself is, in many cases, anticlimactic, because what you've got are fans who don't bring that kind of rabid enthusiasm that you get at championship games. Last week in Atlanta, it was hard to hear myself think. The crowd is loud. There's a roof on the building. The noise doesn't get out. The decibel level is jet engine-like. It's deafening. Plus, I'm hearing it through a headset. I'll be deaf by the time I'm 65. But the last few Super Bowls actually have been competitive, and crowds are into it a little bit more. The day itself, very long. nothing better than when that game is over, when I finally put that camera in the box, because I don't plan to look at that camera again until the following Labor Day.
What will your role be during this year's Super Bowl?
At this year's Super Bowl, I will be shooting sound on the San Francisco 49ers sideline. Started shooting the 49ers just before the playoffs and have been with them now right through the playoffs. Their coaches are getting familiar with me. During the Lord's Prayer in the locker room, I'm holding hands now with players and coaches. That familiarity does not, in this case, breed contempt. What it does is it allows me access. Coaches will say things in front of me that they might not say in front of a network cameraman or somebody foreign to them. They look at me, know who you are. Even Randy Moss had something to say to me last week.
So you're a friend.
I'm part of the team. An appendage. I'm an appendage to the team.
That's a great position.
Well, yes, trust is important in what I do, because my sound man's hanging a boom microphone over conversations that, in theory, are trying to change the course of the game, trying to alter the outcome of the game. And many times I'll get that look like, and they'll size me up, but then they'll see NFL films. Okay. Plus, they'll recognize my face, know that guy. And I'm older than most of these guys now, so.
Now, you mentioned Steve Sable, and I understand that he gave some pep talks and such before, obviously, the Super Bowl. This will be the first year without him. How's that going to be for you?
Steve was the greatest boss ever. Steve saved my bacon many times. Steve was inspirational. It's amazing how one complimentary word from Steve could change my week. Not having Steve around, it just doesn't seem right, especially at Super Bowls. That was Steve's stage. We all miss him.
Now, I also understand that you know Ray Lewis better than almost anyone.
Ray and I got very close last year. We do a series for NFL Network called A Football Life. And I spent an entire season with Ray. When I say an entire season, we wired him at every game. I met Ray's mother. I met Ray's father. I met Ray's children. I visited Ray's homes, the one in Boca Raton, the one in Baltimore, on numerous occasions. We traveled with Ray. We went to public appearances. We basically documented Ray's life. And in that instance, I was part of the family. Ray's bodyguard, Ray's security people, everybody around Ray realized these guys are on the inside this time. And quite an experience. Ray is an inspirational person. He's very different. Ray had an incident in his youth that altered the course of his life in a very positive way. He is a role model for every young man coming out of college who wants to know how to conduct his life in the National Football League. What to do, not to do. What to do. I mean, this guy just lives his life right. And I think that came across in the show. Hopefully not too much, because he's a badass on the football field. He said at the end of the show, until I stop playing, nobody will play this position better than me. I give you as evidence the last 2 weeks since he returned. The inspiration he provides to that team, and also his play on the field. Friends will say to me, well, he missed that tackle, Well, in Major League Baseball, if you make 7 outs in 10 at-bats, you're an all-star. If you miss an occasional tackle, I remind these people, those guys get paid too. Ray is at 37 still a great football player and an inspirational human being.
Now, knowing him as well as you do, what would you say is the biggest public misconception about Ray?
Biggest public misconception. That Ray is a self-absorbed bad guy. Ray is not a self-absorbed person in any way, shape, or form. He's very much aware of his persona. But he does more things for more people under the radar. He doesn't want media people knowing about most of the things that he does for underprivileged children, for a dying man in Baltimore, for a person suffering from leukemia in California, a young teenager. All of these things are part of Ray's private life that he gave us access to when we did the show. Ray does more people and does more good for the Baltimore community in a week than most well-wishers and most of Ray's naysayers do in their lifetimes. He's genuine. Lots of guys will do wonderful things when cameras are pointed at them. Ray does them just because.
And what would you say was the most surprising thing you learned about Ray in all the time you spent with him?
How dedicated and devoted he is as a father. His kids don't see him much because his kids are growing up in Florida. Peter King called me earlier this year and asked me after Ray got injured, is this his last year? And I said, absolutely. No one else said that. Everybody else said, no, Ray will be back next year. He won't give it up until he can't play the game anymore, can't walk in a wheelchair. I said, no, this is it. Peter said, why? You're the only one to say this. I said, Ray wants to be his oldest son's biggest fan at the University of Miami next year. Peter said, you're going to stand by that? I said, absolutely. Well, when Ray announced his retirement, Peter gave me a shout out and said the only person who got it right was NFL Films producer, documentarian, and cameraman Bob Angelo, who spent the year with Ray last year. It was simple. Ray told me. He told me what he was going to do, and I was not surprised.
And what do Ray's teammates say about him when he's not around?
I don't know. I mean, I know Ray Rice looks up to him as a big brother. I know Haloti Nada looks to him for inspiration. I know Terrell Suggs wants to share that stage that Ray is on. But so long as Ray's playing, Ray's the only person on that stage. I mean, Ray is bigger than the game of football. And I was really pissed off when I heard people say, did you see that pathetic performance after the game, Ray on his knees crying? He's an emotional man. Ray is that might be the thing. Everybody knows about Ray's speeches and Ray's inspirational talks and, Ray taking a rookie aside and explaining. Ray is emotional. He wears it right here. And after that game, I wasn't there, but I was not surprised when I saw that picture of Ray on the field with Ray Rice. I said, that's Ray.
So that was authentic.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. During the production of the Football Life show on Ray, someone said, well, Ray knew you were there. That's why he did that. So what? He's going to do it anyway. He knows I'm there, so what? That doesn't change what he did. Last year, in 2012, Ray befriended a man who was dying of cancer. The guy's dream was to go to a Super Bowl, and Ray was going to take him to the Super Bowl last year. Unfortunately, Lee Evans had the ball in his hands, dropped it, and the Patriots went instead of the Ravens. Not long thereafter, the man died. This year, they are going. Ray befriended that guy. The man dying of cancer wrote Ray a letter, said, would you just pray for me? Ray went to his home several times on numerous occasions. These are the kinds of things that Ray does under the radar.
I was going to ask you to tell us about Ray Lewis off the field, but you've definitely touched on it.
That story brings it all together for me. In Ray's bedroom, Ray has a Purple Heart that was given to him by a man who would routinely go into battle, a special ops guy in Afghanistan, with a Ray Lewis jersey on underneath his fatigues. One time he failed to do that, and he was wounded severely. You get 2 Purple Hearts when you get wounded and survive and go back into the service. One for you and one for your family. This gentleman gave the second Purple Heart to Ray Lewis. It's on display in Ray's bedroom, right next to the picture of this gentleman who died last January.
Now let's talk a little bit about Ray's retirement. Obviously, you weren't surprised by it because you predicted it. So do you think that his retirement has helped trigger this run to the Super Bowl?
Absolutely. Joe Flacco's playing better. He's not turning the ball over. He's throwing the deep ball well. Ray Rice is playing the way Rice always plays. But Ray coming back, his presence in the huddle makes those 10 men better. Of course, it doesn't hurt that he gets a dozen tackles a game either. Without Ray, how far do the Ravens go in the playoffs? I don't know. That's idle speculation. Has Ray made it easier for the Ravens to win these playoff games? Yeah.
And do you think after his playing days are over that we might see Ray on television in a different capacity?
Oh, I absolutely think that Ray will. I think Ray wants to go into acting. Actually, I'm certain of that. I think Ray also is being courted by ESPN, and I think he'll wind up on ESPN on their football telecasts in the near term. Long term, who knows? Ray wants to tailgate at the U. He wants to watch Ray Jr. play football. And Ray Jr. is special. Ray can really play, running back or defense, either side of the ball. I mean, the young man may play as a freshman. Doesn't have Dad's size, but he's got everything. And Ray wants to be part of that. He just wants to, doesn't drink, occasional glass of wine perhaps, but he wants to tailgate at the U and just bask in it, relive it.
So after this Super Bowl is said and done, do you think Ray stays and lives in Baltimore, or does he move elsewhere, say Florida, somewhere else?
Ray's a Florida guy. I don't think I don't know what his financial circumstances are. I'm sure he's doing well. I don't know that he'll let go of the Baltimore home. He's such a presence in that community. He can't walk anywhere. I mean, he's like Cal Ripken. He can't go anywhere without being recognized, without being made. But he wants to watch his boy play football. His boy's, at the University of Miami, and Ray grew up in Florida, and something tells me that he'll find his way back to the Sunshine State.
Bob, thanks for your time.
Thank you.